Welcome back to another episode of Good Question by CoinSchedule TV. So Paddy, thanks very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you ever so much for having me.
So how was Consensus last week? I remember you telling me you were there.
Yeah, I think it was very, very different from what it was like last year. Last year it was probably double the size, I'd say. And yeah, I mean, you couldn't walk 10 feet without being sort of attacked by some sort of ICO salesman.
Yeah.
So the people who had gone to Consensus this year, I think had probably survived 2018. Probably were still evidently still enthusiastic, still committed to whatever they were doing. And yeah, I thought as a rule, the quality and the discussions and everything, yeah, in a way, everything about Consensus this year, I think was far better than the one year before. Which
Good.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Which is a good thing. Yeah, I can only imagine. Like my CEO went to Consensus last year, and he said it was just an absolute nightmare. You couldn't get anywhere. You couldn't find anyone with any substance. You'd ask someone how long they'd been in the industry, and they say 3 weeks.
Yeah, that was the problem. I think it was very hard to sort of meet the right people. And yeah, I mean, last year I was kind of used to. It was a hell of an experience for me trying to find anybody to talk to because I didn't really know many people.
Yeah.
This year I kind of had that advantage. I knew a few more people, and generally speaking, people I didn't know, you could go up to and talk, and actually they were probably the people you would have liked to have spoken to anyway. So yeah, it was far better.
Good stuff. I'm glad to hear it. So before we get into anything else, can I just ask you how you got into crypto and blockchain in the first place and where that's brought you to now?
Sure. So I think most people of our sort of age, we probably heard about cryptocurrency at university.
Yeah, that's right.
I hadn't really. I think I bought like a tiny bit of Bitcoin, or maybe as an example, but it was one of those things I bought it, completely forgot about it. Probably is on my old laptop somewhere. I haven't seen it since. And then so graduated in 2017, and I got a job working for a publication in the city, basically covering M&As, and quarterly results, and general business news. And it coincided with the time when Bitcoin almost hit $20,000.
Yeah.
And at that, my editor at the time said, "Would you be interested in? Well, we'd like you to cover cryptocurrency because you're the young guy, you're the new guy. We don't want to learn about it, but we want to get the views." And during those periods, you could just put Bitcoin in a title and you'd get 20,000 views. So yeah, it was kind of learn about it, understand the tech, understand the business, what the whole sort of offering is about, and basically report on it. So I spent it was kind of an interesting time to get into crypto because it was I probably got into it right just after that peak, just after the sort of high point, and I was I think one of the first stories I ever wrote about was when I think after this sort of Korean hack or whatever, and I think the price had almost halved, like the total market cap had halved. So that was kind of where I was learning about crypto during this sort of rapid decline in prices again. And then you had the the senatorial hearing, and that brought the price down even further. So that was so it was it was like a baptism of fire to try to sort of rapidly learn about all this new technology, all these sort of various coins, all these various people, and what basically was going on. And anyway, so I was in that position for maybe 2 and a bit months, and then that was when I think general interest in digital assets started to decline.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
So I think my boss then said, "Oh, we'd like you to go back to doing," and I said no. And so after that I left, and I was using all these various media sources. For research and things like that, and one of them was Crypto Briefing, and one of those days when I just sort of resolved that I thought, no, I kind of would like to do this as my career now, or for full time anyway. I just saw an ad and I applied, and I was lucky enough to get hired. Been with them, so just over a year and 15 months now, I think I've been there. So maybe not the longest, but it seems like a long time.
Yeah. Well, was it 15? Whatever time you've been in the crypto and blockchain industry, you should times it by 10, and that's relative to traditional financial services.
I heard someone said like the industry ages like you need to put the industry in dog years basically,
Yeah, that's
which I
good.
think is kind of like quite a good way of putting it.
That's a very good way of putting it. Yeah. In which case, because I've been in since 2014 was when I first started investing. 2013 was when I first read about it. So wow, I must be an old dog at this point.
Basically, yeah, you're at least you're coming to your retirement age, mate.
Yeah,
Basically.
yeah, I must be. I must be. And so, what did you find like most interesting when you started reading up on it? Like, is it the impacts, the underlying technology, the potential to make a considerable return on investment?
um, I, I would say, I mean, I was because I mean, I was learning about it as I was writing it during those early
Okay,
periods.
fair enough.
I remember I was fascinated by all these sort of propositions that people say blockchain could do. And I mean, I know people will probably say, oh, well, some of those expectations were frankly ridiculous. And yes, a lot of them were.
Hmm.
But there were a couple within there. And I remember sort of the whole idea of fractional ownership and remittance and settlements.
Yeah.
The way in which you can make you can make like global issuances for, a fraction of the cost that it can do now. I just thought all these sort of this sort of the way you could leverage this technology to sort of create a far more flexible a financial offering in any way. I found that was I found that very sort of stimulating, and that was kind of I think what really got me interested in the beginning was
Mhm.
that idea. And it's sort of I mean I'm still very interested in that, but it has kind of sort of branched out from there a bit now as well. So yeah, that was definitely yeah.
And so, since then, what captivates your imagination at this point?
Um, I guess to be fair, it would probably still be a lot of the stuff that is coming out of the more sort of finance area of the industry. So I mean, I'm sure there's good stuff coming. I mean, I know there is good stuff coming out. When it's things that are sort of looking at working with IoT or AI even.
Hmm.
But I still kind of like the idea. I like. I mean, there's for instance the projects we're looking at the moment are now looking at ways in which you can create uncorrelated baskets and stuff like that, like all these sort of synthetics and stuff like that that are now also developing. One which I think we should be publishing in the next couple of hours, so probably it's already out there by the time your viewers see this.
Probably.
It'll be looking at how you can create an uncorrelated asset, which can also sort of have elastic supply. So it's kind of like that's the problem with gold and a lot of other things like that is, demand for gold can go up, but supply doesn't often move that much. And the one thing this project we keep doing is finding a way in which you can allow supply to move incrementally so that you don't get significant price spikes or dips or whatever like that. Bart Simpsons, I think they're called.
So it's kind of like trying to do a stable coin, but by having a fluctuating supply schedule. Is that what they're trying to do?
I mean, they didn't. They actually. I did say, "Are you a stable coin?" And they said, "Kind of, but not really."
Okay.
It's algorithmic, and they're basically one thing they're keen on doing is pegging it or pegging it to the purchasing power of the US dollar in 2019,
Okay.
rather than the US dollar just generally, because as you've probably seen graphs as well where you see the sort of purchasing power of the US dollar like significantly declining over the last 100 years. Even since the mid 90s, it's declined significantly.
Yeah.
So it's a way of kind of like locking in. I think they say they call it like freezing value in time. That's kind of their sort of way they look at it, and and having all these other things, and it's kind of sort of marketed more towards. I probably shouldn't say marketed. It's aimed towards I would say more sort of professional, sophisticated investors, but it is still it's an interesting way in which you can sort of use this technology in a way that you can create assets which really couldn't have been created beforehand.
Mm. Okay. And so just thinking about the adoption of crypto in society,
Sure.
and also with regards to the price fluctuations of Bitcoin and the overall market cap of the industry, what do you think are the most significant factors affecting adoption and price and those kind of things?
I mean, I would say that there probably are very different factors affecting adoption and price. I think adoption, which is, I would say probably with adoption, it will always be general accessibility to it. So at the moment, I mean, you've been in, you're a veritable granddad in the industry, so you know more about this than I. But when you first get involved in cryptocurrency, when you first try and buy cryptocurrency, you have, it's quite like a conceptual obstacle course.
Yeah.
Just work your way around. You have to first. I mean, now it seems obvious what a private key is, but when you first come across a private key in a wallet, it doesn't. It seems kind of counterintuitive. It doesn't seem to make sense because, in fact, it's kind of more like an account, not a wallet. So it's all this sort of terminology, which I think actually makes crypto far less accessible than it really ought to be. So I think the key for adoption a lot of the time is, well, firstly, accessibility and also relevance. I mean, you can do various things with cryptocurrencies, some of them great, but unless you make it abundantly clear why people should, people or businesses or whoever should use it, then what are you really doing? And I think that is getting better. I think people are far less, or the people in the sector are far less insular than they were 12, 18 months ago. I think there is more of an attempt now to try and make bridges and build partnerships with companies who are otherwise not involved in blockchain or cryptocurrency. But I think there needs to still be more towards that, because unless you can kind of make a value, the technology can be great, but unless you sort of tell people why they ought to use it, it will just sit and gather dust. So I think those are probably the main sort of factors for adoption. I think price is far harder to sort of understand. I think because the market is a very, very uncertain beast. I mean, obviously, a lot of stuff came out earlier this year about wash trading and market manipulation, which undoubtedly has had an effect on the price. I mean, the recent BSV pump is an example of that. I mean, I think I could be relatively confident in saying that probably wasn't caused by any legitimate demand or legitimate market demand from normal people. I think that was probably caused by other factors, which I'm not quite certain what. And there have been other cases, especially with coins with slightly smaller market caps, where it's far easier to manipulate them and far easier to sort of do pump and dumps and things like that. So I think that's a major problem, where you have all this fake volume, which makes it very hard to sort of determine what other factors can affect price. Obviously, any sort of bullish news really doesn't have an effect. Likewise with bearish news. November was a classic example when bearish news really led to a cocktail of various bits of bearish news all came out at the same time, and the market cap halved again. But I think generally I think a lot of the time on like a day-to-day basis. Sorry, this is a very long-winded answer. I know.
Go for it. Don't worry. I like a good rant.
But I think on a day-to-day basis, and a lot of the time, even when we saw things like the small sort of spike up in early April, as an example, that I think is often caused by people putting in sort of short positions on various on both sides, support and resistance levels, right? And then it takes one sort of slight move upwards to sort of eradicate all those positions, and that leads to it basically sort of exacerbates the move far higher than it probably would be. So I think though there are multiple factors, but I think on a day-to-day basis, those are probably the main. That's probably the main one. Is all the sort of other sort of activities that are going on either side, which kind of determines price and leads to these complete, almost unexplained price jumps and price collapses.
And what about the most recent bull run? Well, the micro bull run up to $8,000. Do you think that was caused by any particular piece of news? Like, for example, I saw a fairly interesting explanation, which is that when Binance got hacked and lost 7,000 Bitcoin, they needed to buy that back just to reimburse their users. And so they bought back through various OTCs and exchanges, and it gave this kind of like momentum shift. And then that momentum shift would have been jumped onto by other institutions and other retail investors. And that's what spiked us up to 8. I don't know if that's the correct one, but it's quite an interesting theory. Do you have any theories to explain it?
Yeah, I mean, I've not heard that one actually before, but that makes a lot more sense.
It's quite interesting, right?
Yeah, definitely. My kind of perspective was that it was probably, I mean, engagement. I mean, we see this all the time from the media's perspective, where engagement and the number of people who are Googling cryptocurrency, Googling Bitcoin or whatever, increases markedly during periods of high volatility.
Yes.
And ever since early April, the market has been very volatile. March was relatively dead, and so was October last year. And you see engagement and general interest in cryptocurrency fall precipitously. So I definitely think that was what you said. Actually, was probably also a major factor in this, and I would have to look more into that. But I also thought maybe that engagement was already quite high, and people were probably from a retail side were probably far more interested in social media and all the old media sites like Crypto Briefing were sort of publishing more articles. So there was a hell of a lot more enthusiasm than there had been previously. Then you have Consensus, which in the past, I think apart from last year, every year there has been a noticeable increase in the prices during Consensus because it is the big industry sort of show of the year. And I think, and I think that probably also sort of added into it as well, probably helped increase the price even further to 8K.
Do you have any price predictions for the end of the year, or do you stay as far away from that as possible?
Yeah, I mean, end of the year, I wouldn't be able to tell at all.
Okay.
My general projection for how, I mean, I would say for Bitcoin anyway, my general, which basically means the whole of the market.
Yeah, at this point anyway.
My view is often is because it's the most traded asset, and there's a hell of a lot of interest. Coming back to what I was saying about short positions as well. What will normally happen, and this is just my theory, but so this is just what I see. What we have seen in the past is you'll have a period of high volatility where the price will either go up or down. It will then settle around normally like an easy figure, so 8K or 3,200, something like that. There it will stay for a month or so, and then basically you'll have all these short positions sort of put in either side, which kind of keep the price from moving too far the other way, because it prevents any high levels of volatility. And then you'll have a breakout, which will then either, and again, up or down. So, and then the cycle kind of repeats itself a little bit. So then you have to find more prices. Then people will be, and I think this has been quite a long, extended period of price discovery. But the price will finally sort of settle somewhere. And I think by the looks of it now, it will probably settle around about the 8K mark, simply because it's been there for about a week, it seems to be about right. It just seems to be, from what a lot of people have been telling me, seems to be roughly where people kind of are happy at staying for the time being. And then I think give it a month, 2 months, or possibly even 3 months, we'll then see another sort of either increase or drop in value, which will then basically cause another period of high volatility, and then the price will settle at some other point. So that's kind of my view for what happens with it, and I think that will continue to happen until other cryptocurrencies develop more mainstream adoption. Until then, it's all to play on Bitcoin, and Bitcoin basically determines the rest of the market. And basically, if you just use Bitcoin to sort of work out its cyclical behavior, you can sort of, I think, work out a rough idea about where to go. So I don't think we're going to see Bitcoin hitting up to 100,000 anytime soon, or even 20,000. I think that's still outlandish to sort of predict. I think it could go up or down. It's anything. It's like a flip of a coin, I think, a lot of the time for these sort of things.
Do you utilize technical analysis when you're looking at the markets, or
we have. We definitely have. I mean, I'm quite a big fan of stochastics, simply because I think it is quite an effective way to sort of work out when markets are overheating, and also when things are oversold as well. So I think a lot of other people on the team do use technical analysis quite a bit as well. Yeah,
because I've read a lot of their reports from out of Crypto Briefing, and I like the fact that it's more fundamental and fundamental analysis oriented as opposed to technical, even though there is some technical.
Sure.
Because you don't want to over rely on technical, because I think these projects are so immature that they haven't had time for price discovery. There hasn't been enough time for the price to reflect the underlying technology. A lot of these projects haven't even released their testnet yet, and yet the technical analysts are saying, well, in 6 months' time it's going to be worth this or that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think, I mean, again, this is just a personal opinion, but I think that same with a lot of you could bring up regulation as an example too. But technical analysis and a lot of the tools we use in technical analysis were not built for cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, true.
They were built namely for a market that opens at 9 a.m. on Monday and closes 5 p.m. Friday, generally. And I think when you're dealing with a market which runs 24/7, and I think you're having investor communities, regions of investors, I guess, which behave very differently from one another. And also you have major problems with wash trading and stuff like that. I think these tools, it can be useful and they can give some level of insight, but like you say, relying on them too heavily, you're not going to be able to predict the future with these sort of things. Definitely not.
Yeah, I agree. I tweeted out last week and hashtag unpopular opinion. If the Bitcoin price determines your mood for the day, your priorities are all wrong. And I didn't go down very well, as you
But
can
I mean,
imagine.
but you're right. I mean, it's almost like sort of trying to predict what the weather's going to be like tomorrow, and then basing your mood on that.
Yeah.
It's often the times there's just no point trying to do it. And it's a shame in a lot of ways because I think the sector is still way too over preoccupied with price,
Mm.
because it's not something that we can have individually a major impact on. And it is something that's always going to change, and maybe not always for the better. I think if we were, and I think this is starting to change too. I think if we were far more preoccupied with the technology and also developing use cases, I think that would actually lead to a far more healthier sort of attitude in the
Mm.
community. That is just my general sort of perspective on it. But I think that is changing. I mean, I think because we aren't seeing as many. Well, there are people still coming into the sector, but it's not like sort of 2017 when you had this whole sort of sort of avalanche of people coming in, all interested in just knowing what's happening with the price,
Mm.
and that was what was fueling sort of interest and stuff like that. I think now people are kind of like they may have invested, they may be interested on some sort of level, but they are also wanting to see use cases. They also want to see some sort of aspect of adoption. They want to see also like if to be fair, their money if they spent their money wisely, if they invested wisely, and they want to know more. They're not going to just sort of drink the Kool-Aid anymore. I think
Mm.
they're far more interested in sort of hard facts, figures, and some sort of metrics which they can sort of use to sort of gauge the success of projects.
Mm. And you know, in 2017, where we saw the dominance of Bitcoin decreasing as altcoins pumped, do you see that happening again during the next bull run, or do you think Bitcoin's going to maintain like a similar dominance rate to what it has at the moment?
Good question.
The podcast is called "Good Question" for a reason.
name, name check.
Yeah,
Um,
trademarked.
um, yeah, it's £5 that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it would depend a lot on what coins seem to be sort of fueling it.
Mhm.
Um, for one thing, I don't think we'll be having anywhere in the sort of next bull run. I don't think we'll be having anywhere near the same number of coins or assets that will be sort of highly traded as we did last time. I mean, Jesus coin I think got up to like $30 and stuff like that. I mean, all those sort of jokey coins just simply will just die off.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I don't know about you, but if I'm going on any sort of price site like Coin Market Cap, I very ever rarely go to the second page. So
Oh yeah, really.
yeah, exactly right. So I kind of just see that there'll be fewer coins, and the coins that there'll be fewer altcoins and stuff like that. And I think it depends on how many of them move and how correlated they are to Bitcoin. I think for the time being, I don't think Bitcoin's in any sort of serious immediate danger of losing its over 50% dominance.
Hmm.
Simply because I don't really see. Well, first of all, IEOs and all those sort of things as well haven't really led to these huge inflations in altcoin market caps like they did in 2017. That could change though, definitely. And it definitely could change.
While you're on the subject of IEOs, where do you stand? Because I was about to go ask about token sales, but you know, IEO is a form of token sale. Do you see the IEO as kind of like the rebirth of token sales? Do you see this trend lasting? Do you think it's a fad?
Um, I'm still on the fence with it. I think there are clearly valid use cases for utility tokens.
Yes.
That's clear. They're not sort of one single answer for all the world's problems or anything, but they do have valid use cases, and I think responsible projects which are able to ensure that investors know this
Hmm.
and are aware that these are for a very specific use and not some sort of it doesn't necessarily reflect value of the company that's issued them. So I think there are some IEOs and IEO platforms as well, which I think could actually be a benefit to the sector. My only concern, I think the concern of a lot of other people, is that we've seen this proliferation in the last couple of months of all these other platforms coming out. I was it a couple of days. I think there's already more than five already,
Hmm.
and it's considering like 5 months ago you would have asked me for an IEO, and I would have said, "What, you mean the old McDonald rhyme?"
Yeah.
And so that sort of speed that all these people are bringing these sort of new platforms to market is kind of worrying. because I kind of feel that it's trying to sort of revive that crowdfunding euphoria that we had in 2017, which wasn't good in any sense of the term, in my opinion. Yeah, I think So I think it would depend a lot. I think as long as the sector as a whole is far better at judging which IEO platforms are good and which IEO platforms are responsible, and basically rewards that by using those platforms to incentivize good behavior, then it shouldn't be a problem. But there again, I think there's a lot to play for still for this market.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Something that I find is a bit of a problem is when people discount token sales and ICOs entirely, and they say, ICOs are worthless. And I've heard plenty of people say that even recently, and people who are well educated. And the simple fact that I bring up to them is that you do realize that 4 out of the 5 top cryptocurrencies on the markets all did an ICO. Ethereum did an ICO, Tron did an ICO, EOS did an ICO. And then obviously Bitcoin didn't, but it's not a coincidence that these monolithic blockchains did an ICO. There's a necessity for these alternative funding mechanisms, even though there's problems in the implementation. And so I think it's naive and narrow-minded to say the funding mechanism itself is a problem and it's a scam. I think that's just too naive.
And I think you're definitely right when you say that the implementation went wrong.
Yeah, agreed.
There
True.
There was imperfections in the implementation, but I mean the idea behind an ICO is very it's very noteworthy. I think it came out of this idea of let's allow any investor who's not necessarily accredited or has the right connections to invest in projects that they would like to invest in. I think it was a great way to try and democratize finance. And democratize the investing space. And yes, it didn't work because I think people, like everything else, the idea got spoiled by quite a few bad actors.
Yeah.
But the actual idea behind an ICO is, I find quite laudable in a lot of ways. It's a shame it just didn't work out. But I think when you see sort of regulators and just a community which is far more educated about the pitfalls of these sort of issuances, then you might see a far more disciplined approach to sort of latter day, like ICOs 2.0 sort of stuff. But that's still, I would say light years away. And I think because of 2017, the term ICO is essentially a swear word, I think, for a lot of people. I think it, I think it would take a long time for people to sort of regain trust in that sort of model and not have to go through an exchange as sort of a counterparty or sort of like some sort of trust or some sort of trust or thing like that.
No, I agree completely. And my final question to you is, over the next 5 years, what would you ideally see cryptocurrencies and blockchain do to the world?
I would say it'd be really, I think it'd be better. Yeah, I would say that my sort of main hope for cryptocurrencies at the moment is that more people buy it or use it, rather than like what cryptos do for the world. I think this technology is still so new that it's still. There are maybe a couple of use cases where you think, oh yeah, that makes sense. I can see a purpose for that. But I think everybody's still very much experimenting with it. My sort of absolute goal would sort of flipping your question on its head a little bit. If people bought more cryptocurrencies or started just playing around with it, experimenting with it, but people and businesses, then I think we'll find far more applicable, far more nuanced use cases and be able to sort of determine far more what this technology, the underlying technology is actually good for. We are getting there. And I think the rise of permission blockchains, again, a lot of people consider that to be heresy. But it has there are clear use cases for that too. So we are starting to see this sort of, I guess you could say almost like sort of like this sort of working out what exactly these things are good for. But I would still say that we need far more of that, far more people just willing to sort of buy it and try it and find out for themselves what they need to use it for rather than anything else.
Yeah, that's totally fair enough. I am, if I'm honest, one of those heretics who's, it's not that I'm anti-closed blockchain. It's just that if you look back to the analogy of intranet versus internet, all these companies, when they started investing in the intranet, they thought that this is going to be the best thing in the world. The internet is worthless. And there was a certain point at which they all went, oh no, wait, we need to not necessarily abandon these projects, but we need to put more emphasis on the internet, on the internet projects. And I think that that's what we're seeing now with all of like IBM and Microsoft saying that they're going to start building on top of Ethereum and Bitcoin for decentralized logins. I think this is now the point where all of those closed blockchain projects, well, not necessarily all of them, but a lot of them are now going to be transferred over to open, just because the network effect and the security, and as transaction speeds start to increase and settlement times decrease, I think it's just going to be the equivalent of intranet to internet, and it's going to be closed blockchain to open. And that's why I spend most of my time focusing on the open, because I think that that's you're going to get more value investing your time in that kind of research field.
No, I agree, but I don't think the two are necessarily mutually exclusive.
Yeah, that's true.
I think there are clearly valid use cases for public blockchains, but also, I mean, especially we're both well, at the moment we are still based in Europe.
Yeah.
Maybe not for much longer.
That's a good point.
British jokes. But you have GDPR and things like that, where you have very strict data privacy laws. With those in effect, it's very hard for businesses to put data on blockchain because it's not necessarily their own data, and they could actually they could actually be in danger of breaching those sort of laws, and therefore. Yeah, so I think there are ways in which you can use privacy and public blockchain, private and public blockchains together. They can complement one another.
Yeah.
It's just trying to work out what works best on what system.
Sure, it's just trial and error, isn't it? Just keep this doesn't work, but this does, and then at some point someone will come up with a protocol or come up with some application that's going to change everything.
It'd be miraculous if we got it right first time.
Yes.
I mean, when does that ever happen that people get it right first time?
And and Bitcoin was the product of multiple attempts to create a decentralized crypto-backed currency, but then obviously there was Hashcash and was it BitGold and all those ones that tried and failed.
Yeah.
And then DigiCash, and then suddenly, bang, Bitcoin's released, and then the revolution starts. So it's going to happen on a smaller scale throughout various applications of blockchain.
Definitely. No, I agree with that completely. Yeah.
Great. Have you got any closing thoughts? Where can everyone reach you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm normally contactable on. Well, most of my contact information is on LinkedIn. I think I've got my message feature open on Twitter. Like, I'm pretty open to most communication on most various platforms. Open door basically. Happy to hear. Yeah, if you disagree with my article, you disagree with me completely. More than happy to hear from you. If you agree with me, I'm also very happy to hear from you. Go on my LinkedIn profile, and basically all my information for contact is there. And also go on Crypto Briefing too. That's our website. I'm contactable on there too.
Amazing. Right. Well, thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you ever so much for having me. Pleasure.
All right. Talk soon, Paddy.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends.